I'm going to kick off by welcoming everybody to our webinar today, and I'm going to introduce myself to begin with, and then our panelists. I'm Debbie Flynn. I'm the Global Travel Practice Leader at Finn Partners, and across the world we have over 200 people in our travel teams and over 200 clients. And I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by my colleague today, Shivani Gupta, who is the managing partner for our teams in India. And perhaps you want to talk a little bit about our operation in India, Shivani, before we introduce everyone to Oliver.
Thank you, Debbie. Hi, Oliver. Hi, everyone. Good morning and good evening from different parts of the world, from India. And yes, we are operating out of India, part of Finn Partners, and which is a global leading PR integrated marketing communications firm. And of course, we have the best of the clients that we have been handling, a great portfolio. In India offices, we are based out of Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and a huge team of 80 plus people with different practice, of course, and services, digital, social media, PR, media. And it's great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to be talking about India today. And before we kick off, Oliver Rowe is the co-founder and managing partner for GSIQ Insights, and we're delighted to partner with them on this. Eva Stewart and I, another co-founder, have worked together across the world for many years. And Oliver, perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit about your organisation too.
Yes, love to. Thanks, Debbie. And it's been absolute pleasure working with you on the report. And I must compliment your team on a fantastic design of the report as well. It does look absolutely fantastic. Yeah, a little bit about us. So as the logo would suggest, we're a tourism insight company. So we are a research business. We provide global research, global insight across syndicated products, ad hoc work, but all around consumers in the travel and tourism space, but also B2B work as well. So Eva and I are the co-founders, and we now operate globally. We're part of a larger GSIQ group as well, with particular interests in tourism of all kinds, obviously, but we do also work in leisure, entertainment, and sports as well. So that's us in a nutshell.
Amazing, thank you. And I think that we would anyone who's on the call from any kind of travel product destination knows that now we don't really find anyone wants to spend any money without the right data to help them make the right decisions. So, insights are a crucial part of all we do. And our global intelligence team led by Thomas absolutely loved working with you and Eva. So thank you for that. So let's kick off. This was our second report about the future of the Indian traveller, and we call this one From Dreamers to Doers. And I think as we start to talk through some of the findings of the report, you'll see why we called it that. It's very much about India's next global generation, and we launched it at Arabian Travel Market. Obviously, the Middle East is a huge market for travel from India, and Shivani moderated a panel there. Shivani, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about how that went.
Yeah, Debbie, the panel was absolutely very energizing at ATM, and our report that we launched from Future of Travel 2025 India, from dreamers to doers. It was so accepted so well. People, in fact, the room was completely filled with tourism boards, airline reps, and hospitality experts. So they came up to us after the panel got over, and in fact they said, how we can resonate, because we have been seeing this shift, the behavioral shift that you have been talking about during the panel and in the report that we highlighted. They said we've been seeing these shifts, but your report completely, we resonate with that, and we can completely join the dots now. So in fact, the panel had, I had some amazing panelists, co-panelists, of course, Mr. Abdullah Yusuf, Director International Operations, which is from Department of Cultural and Tourism, Abu Dhabi, and Mr. Badr Ali, Director Proximity Markets, Dubai, Department of Economy and Tourism, and Saurabh Rai, Executive Vice President, Preferred Travel Groups. So definitely it was a very interesting panel, and how everyone realized that, they could resonate with the point that how Indian travelers have evolved over a period of time and how there is a behavioral shift amongst different generations.
We're going to come on to talk about some of the implications for product and marketing development, aren't we? But a few things that I'll highlight as we kick off here. I think one of the biggest things that we can take away from the report is just how much the Indian travellers value travel. And I think the fact that stood out for all of us, there were a couple of big things that surprised me, but that the Indian traveller is preferring luxury travel over lavish weddings. And we'll come on to talk about it later, but that really surprised me because that's what, the Indian traveller were famous for so many years, and even choosing travel over luxury goods. Experience, we talk now in the travel industry, don't we, about the experience economy being so important, but that again came out so highly in terms of being a real driver. And also seeing in the report that 56% of the respondents prefer to upgrade the hotel over the flight. But alongside experience, the importance of cultural authenticity, fun and adventure, emotional impact, we talk a bit later on about feeling, don't we, rank really as high as relaxation does in terms of what people are looking for, from the next experience and getaway. And again, talking of emotion, we broke the personas down into types that we'll talk about. So we've got the fun-seeking explorer, the self-improving idealist, the balanced indulger, I think that might be me, the emotionally inspired story seeker, and the culturalist. And we're going to talk about them in a bit, but let's start by setting the scene and talk about how the Indian traveller and the whole landscape is changing. So Oliver, in the report, we see a clear shift in Indian travel behaviour, especially amongst the younger generations. Can you just talk us through some of the key findings around the generational differences in their travel preferences, please?
Absolutely, Debbie. I'll just take a few minutes to sort of go through. What I'm going to do is just talk about Gen Z, then we'll go through millennials and then Gen X's and sort of compare and contrast. So if we think about Gen Z to start with, they're all about in my view anyway, the potential of a trip and of the destination as well. Often, the difference is that they're able to travel solo with friends, so a little bit more footloose than the older generations. But they're very much drawn to fun, excitement, and a little bit of adventure as well. And when I talk about the potential of a trip, it's that little bit of unknown that gets thrown into it as well. So they're less drawn to, say, nature, culture and history, scenic beauty, those sorts of things. And they're also more likely to actually be turning their travel dreams into reality because they're expecting to visit one of their dream destinations on their next trip rather than somewhere a bit more realistic, as we might have put it. But despite all the sort of fun, the excitement, the adventure, we see that Gen Z actually over-indexes for wanting to come back feeling relaxed and rebalanced, and feels a little tricky to resolve that with all the fun and excitement and adventure. But I think actually what's happening here is the relaxation, the rebalancing is sort of after having kicked back, after having had letting off steam, and actually finding out a little bit more about who they are and what they like, then that's where you can then end your trip feeling relaxed and rebalanced, having had a great time. But I think we have to remember, this is an age still where people are very much of personal discovery, and that is reflected in their travel. So it's also for some of these travellers, it will be the first chance to experience a bit of wider cultural diversity. So that all has to be taken into consideration for this kind of trip. As we go up the generations, we move up to millennials, there's definitely a shift here. And for millennials, rather than it being about the potential of the trip, it's about the place itself, the physicality of where it is that they're going. And that's around luxury, it's around indulgence, and I think what they're after is a little bit more me time or a little bit more close family time. I think that's probably how I'd put it. So it means that destinations aren't quite as far flung. They're not quite dream destinations in the same way that they are with Gen Z. Particularly as the party size might be a little bit larger. because they're taking a family with them rather than just paying for themselves. So cost is obviously more of an issue there. But essentially for millennials, what we're doing is we're dialing down the fun and the excitement a little bit, just a little bit, also the adventure a little bit, and we're dialing up culture, nature, and a little bit more history in there as well. So it's just a slight shift going on in what they're after. And in terms of the sort of marketing messages, they're looking for relax again, recharge, but reconnect as well. And they're also saying that they'd like a unique experience as part of this, which we didn't really see quite so much with the Gen Zs. They also do over-index in the data for wanting to return inspired and energized, so sort of ready for the next phase. And if you are working, very hard and you're bringing up a family, maybe a bit of inspiration and energy is what you need to get you through to your next trip. So that's sort of Gen Z, that's millennials, and then Gen X to finish with. For them, it's a much greater focus on people, and that's the big change here, with planning as well. I'll come on to that in a moment, but a bit of luxury still, and they still want their fun, they still want a bit of adventure, they still want some new experiences. But actually the people side is about connecting with family and friends, particularly internationally, and they will be more traveling with family as well. But they definitely are pushing up the culture, history, nature, scenic beauty, that element. And one of the things they indexed on was for unforgettable moments, which I think is great. But I have a feeling it's not just seeing the sunset in a beautiful location, it's seeing the sunset with the right people around you, i.e. your family. And that's, I think, what the difference is here. And again, they want to return relaxed, inspired, but they've also said more connected to the world. And I think that's a people thing that's coming through there. And just finally on this, with Gen X, the very strong thing is around planning. They're big planners. I am one myself, and I do like to plan. I like an itinerary. I like to know what I'm doing each day and what everyone else is going to be doing in my party each day, and that everyone will be happy and catered for. So maximizing every moment, having themselves clear what they're doing, that everything's going to be work, and that's right down to almost zero unknowns. Not quite that much. There's still a little bit of what might happen, but things like food is so important that you've got to make sure that's everyone's going to have what they need when they're away, and so that element of planning along with the people. So just to recap there, it's like Gen X for me, it's the potential of the trip. Millennials, it's about the place itself, and for Gen X, it's the people and the planning.
And on the planning side, the Gen Z are almost the opposite of that in terms of they over-index on being impulsive in terms of their bookings. And what do you think is influencing their decision to be impulsive, or how can, knowing they're not going to need that long lead booking period that some of the others are going to have, how can the travel industry utilize this opportunity for encouraging them to travel?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think we're still seeing the majority of Indian bookers are quite late bookers, regardless of age group, but there's definitely this element that the younger you are and the less dependence you have, the easier it is to be a little bit more footloose. But overall, practical considerations are still extremely important. Where are the budget airlines flying? What are the visa requirements? These are still going to be absolutely critical. But then, as we say in the report, the emotional drivers come through to seal the deal. And I'm sure we'll come on and talk about that in more detail. But looking at Gen Z, they are being more influenced by, if we're actually getting quite practical here, full travel vlogs, influencer reviews and blogs, YouTube, Instagram leading the way there. And they really like that emotional, those engaging stories, first-person narratives. That really contrasts with, say, Gen X, who are far more into testimonials and itineraries, as I was saying before. So if you are going with friends and going solo as Gen Z, you probably still tag along for the family holiday as well if you can. Certainly know that mine do. But really,
Yeah, mine
it's
too.
at some point I'll be free of them, but no, don't tell my wife. No, they do have that ability to be more footloose, but and likewise, because they can be footloose, they can go to the latest must-visit destination, or where it is that influencers are perhaps pointing a spotlight that wasn't there before. So they can kind of turn that dream into action a bit more. But as I said before, I think there is to capture them, a little bit of that just showing off the beaten track, or certainly culturally how to take a step out of into something a little bit different, really does seem to appeal. So it's not completely safe. There's a little bit of jeopardy in there as part of the trip. So I think that's got to be part of it. And again, it's all part of this personal discovery, this life discovery, and that cultural diversity that they could get.
Great. Now, and Shivani, do you have anything to add to that in terms of the quite different emotional drivers between the three generations that we talked to? So obviously you're there in India. Is there anything you would add to Oliver's comments on that?
So I think Oliver's covered pretty much what the report says. So definitely, when we are talking about starting from Gen Z, they are impulsive, and it's no longer about all the generations. In fact, it's no longer about the transactional travel. It's more about intentional. And throughout all the generations, there is one thread, one common thread, which is about the emotional emotional drive. But the emotional drive aspects might be different in all these three generations, but definitely it's the emotional drive that which is more intentional, which is more it could be from impulsive, from generation Gen Z to Gen X. It is like Oliver mentioned, it's more planned. And of course, millennials, like we talk about, they would love to, a combination of indulgence plus some planning. So it's a great mix what we see. And it's not about just, when we say that impulsive travel does not just mean the short haul travel only. And impulsive travel could be like, if they would want to have a flight longer than 3, 4, 5 hours as well. And it could be like, okay, I have in next 15, 20 days, I might be, want a break from my work or whatever, like, and nowadays, because of work from home options, people do opt for that as well. So it's not even anymore about particular days. It's not just about particular holidays. It's also about, I think travel industry needs to be active on their toes throughout the year for Indian travelers.
And talking to them, I guess, through different channels with different languages according to the understanding of
Yes.
their motivations.
Absolutely. So when we talk about, different channels, of course, we are talking about different, so there are different touch points. It cannot be, you cannot have just one touch point for this audience. So there are different touch points, multiple touch points that we need to have a connection with. And when we talk about the kind of content, it has to be very authentic. It has to be very realistic. It has to be something which they can resonate with, emotionally connect with. And definitely they are very like Indian travelers want very real it's not about just the influences, it's more about the real-time stories Indian traveler is looking for, the real which is very visually enriched also.
Yes, I think we can't going to come on and talk about it, but one of the findings was in terms of where the influence of friends and families and people that are not necessarily big celebrities influence them too, that they're really interested in. I'd really like to talk about the bit of insight into the cultural changes, because the fact that really surprised me was what a high percentage of the audience that we talked to for this report, how important luxury is to them. And in order to achieve luxury experiences, they would rather spend their money on luxury for themselves, I guess, and their immediate family, than a big, lavish, big family and friends wedding. What's changed?
So I think a very powerful reflection in the report is how the Indian values, like it's not that they have changed, but there is a shift in how it is perceived. How luxury is perceived has changed definitely. with this generation does not want to spend. It's a very interesting fact, and it was actually astonishing to see that 81% of Gen Z opted for that. I would not want to go for a luxury wedding. I would want to go for a luxury holiday, luxury travel, which is very interesting. And so luxury is no longer about show off. It is more about how I would want to feel. It's more about, it's more about self-discovery. It's more immersive. So it's very personal. It's no longer about what we would want to show out to the world. So that definitely has evolved over a period of time. And I think that is something that all travel brands need to see. So, which is a very interesting fact.
I mean that there's this is a tradition in India that the father pays for the wedding, like it is in England. Is that a tradition? I don't know, because I was just thinking there must be a lot of fathers being very happy that they're not going to have to pay the big lavish weddings.
I think it's more about it's not just. I think there is a very great understanding of the generations, and it's not that Gen Z wants this and probably Gen X will not want this. It's a very great mix of. In fact, there are times when people are doing destination weddings when we are talking about. So it's not that okay, fine. I'll call. In India, it's about the weddings are more than 1,000 people, more than 1,500 people. So now you are talking about luxury wedding. It is luxury wedding with maybe a luxury travel. So it could be
Okay.
like number of people you are taking with you and you are inviting for a wedding, which is a close-knit group. And close-knit group in India also would mean anything from 300 to 500 people.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So no, still an expensive.
In fact, I was on a call with somebody. We were talking about, like Maldives. We were talking about Bahamas. And there are people who are planning high network Indians are planning their destination weddings at Bahamas as well. So, which is very interesting, you are not no longer about that I need a direct flight or it is a short haul flight. It's about what I want, what is like that. That's why the report is called From Dreamers to Doers.
Yes.
You're no
So are
longer
there?
dreaming about it.
Yes. So are there particular experiences or destinations that, from a luxury perspective, I mean, you just mentioned the Bahamas and Maldives, which are absolutely up there in terms of super luxury perception, but also there's barefoot luxury too, isn't there? There are boutique hotels and huge hotels. How do you think, what do you think out of the destinations that came out of our report are most appealing from a luxury perspective to the Indian traveller? And also, are there any tips that travel brands need to think about in terms of getting that balance of the luxury that's the luxury experience, or not necessarily, the showy offy luxury?
So, like I mentioned, luxury is not just about how much you're spending. It's the experience. It's not just about the amount of money I'm spending. It's the kind of experience. Luxury today is I would want to have a I would want to go for a wellness retreat, and I would want to have a nature walk. I would want to have a meal with a view. So that's all luxury. And what the hospitality sector, the boutique hotels, the hotels, and even the tourism boards, what they are doing actually is they are customizing it as per and which has to be done, which because of the different generational emotional drivers, customization of these, I would say rather personalization of these luxury categories need to be defined well. So it's not just data driven, it has to be data plus emotional aspect driven. And
Yes,
when
to
we
give them the
talk
feeling that
about,
they're just looking
yes,
for, isn't it?
and
Yeah.
absolutely. And when we talk about personalization, so it's no longer about, one size fits all. We talk about, so democratizing aspiration as well, layering of luxury. And India has different brackets of income groups who have aspiration to spend, who want to travel abroad, who would want to, whether it's a long haul travel, whether it's fewer travels or more travel. But definitely layering of that luxury. By layering of luxury, I do not mean that you kind of dilute what luxury and premium means, but make it sound more rewarding rather than inheriting. So this is something that it has to be a very structured approach and very agile approach.
Okay. Now, staying on the subject of destinations, really. So obviously, probably there's every destination in the world has an element of luxury in the product. Oliver, tell us a bit more about the different destinations that our research group really were interested in and on different levels, because it was quite fascinating, some of it, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, Debbie, and I think the way we asked it was we asked people about their dream destinations, and we asked them about more realistic destinations. So sort of thinking about the dream destination side, I mean, the first thing to say is there were fewer dream destinations for Gen Z. They seem a bit more focused in what it is they're after. But regardless, when you look across the generations, actually the top five are pretty consistent across Gen Z, across millennials, across Gen X. So we've got the US topping the list, Switzerland coming through next, Australia, Japan, and also France. That kind of makes up our top five. And for each of those, we actually find Gen Z's score is slightly lower, except for Japan. Japan holds up really well for Gen Z. So I think that's very much a key destination for that group. But there are some, some destinations which are performing poorly amongst Gen Z. US, Switzerland, and Australia of those top five are getting lower scores. But actually, when you come out of the top five, you also find that the UK is not performing particularly well, or New Zealand. And if you go further down the list as well, down to Egypt. I can understand Egypt, it's more of a culture, history that we were saying earlier. That's not really what's driving the Gen Z decision. But the UK has historically had a fairly decent view as a bit more of a party place and fun, excitement, etc. But it's underperforming with Gen Z, certainly versus Gen X and millennials. So there's some interesting nuances in there. I think also one of the other things I'll just pick out is the difference between those in the survey with a higher income versus those on sort of middle to higher incomes. Those with the higher income groups, there are some particular destinations, dream destinations we're talking about here, that over-index. And it's actually some of the smaller markets like South America we see over-indexing. And in Asia, it's South Korea and Taiwan. And then in Africa, Kenya and South Africa. But some of this is probably being driven by the diaspora, but others just from the fact that I think the higher income group has got a little bit more experience of traveling, willing to go further afield to try something a little bit more off the beaten track. So there's probably some different factors at play there. And I think it's important to understand what it is about your particular destination that appeals to different groups, because it's not going to be the same thing for everybody. So there is a bit of learning, I think, to do there. So that's it kind of in terms of the dream destinations. The fact is also that for Gen Z, they intend to go to more of their dream destinations. That's where they want to go in the next year or two. It's not the more realistic destinations. They're prioritizing their dream destinations, which I think is a really important finding for the survey.
Thank you. And let's talk about the US now, because Shivani, you're just back, aren't you, from a few weeks there, and your son's just graduated from uni. So it's quite interesting to see. So the US, there were, came out top, and then some broadly, didn't it? And then there were certain parts of the US that also it indexed. So I'd like to just hear your views on if you think there's particular parts of the US that appeal to any one or all of our target group, that the report showed. But also, do do you feel what's going on in the US in terms of tariffs is either affecting travel now or is going to in the future? What are your views versus your views and what the reports told us when we did it which was it's only the end of April, so it's really very current, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, okay, three parts. I'll divide this question into three parts. To begin with, of course, when we talk about US, US again has always been into the aspirational part of for Indian travelers, long-haul Indian travelers, whether the first time Indian travelers or it's like again converting dream into reality. And more for the reason because of the freedom, the cultural cultural influence that we see, diversity of experiences we see in US, and a lot of inclination for different, when we talk about different generations, definitely they are from Gen Z. It's maybe, it's about pop, it's about, they gravitate towards cities like New York, LA, and San Francisco. And millennials who would seek more experience and more indulgence, probably they will look at Colorado, Napa Valley, Seattle, and which is what we found in the report. And when we talk about Gen X, it's more because of the old ties, traditional ties. I think it's more about the traditional cities and the infrastructure access that easy and access to the Indian communities. So it's East Coast and West Coast mostly. And coming to when we talk about the increasing tariffs, so there are two factors to it. Of course, the macroeconomics definitely, sways towards a logical thinking, which is that, okay, people might not want to travel so much. They might, and especially the long haul travels like traveling to US. But on the other hand, if you see, like as per the report, we are talking about, like we just mentioned a few minutes back, it's no longer about, spending on lavish weddings. It's about the experience we are talking about. It's about once in a lifetime, whether it is once in a lifetime or whether it's the experience that they would want to keep having, exploring different places, whether it's for fun and adventure, whether it is with the feeling of coming back relaxed and rejuvenated, whether it's to experience new culture. So definitely it might slow down, but it does not mean that people are not traveling. And in fact, if they are traveling, they're traveling with a full bang, I would say, like more like luxury travel. So the number of travels or the frequency may reduce overall, but the luxury travelers who are keen to travel, in fact, again, the same thing I would say, when we talk about luxury, it does not mean, how much you're spending. It's about, again, democratizing the luxury. So it's more about how you can convert luxury into different layers.
That's the key for the US different DMOs is actually to make sure they're talking the right language through the right media to the different groups.
Yes, and different, I mean, to understand the food preferences, to understand the cultural preferences, what is it that they are looking for, and what are the touch points where you can touch the Indian audience, what kind of content. So it's not about just, selling a promotional content. It's not about the display content. It's about the feel content. So for example, no longer you can say, visit, you should not, I mean, visit New York. So it's more about come and experience yourself with a once in a lifetime movie experience. So it's no longer about the old age ways of promoting your content or promoting a destination or a place. It's the emotional content. How do you resonate with your content, and which is visually rich, which is also connecting with the emotional aspect of your Indian traveler.
Tell me, Japan's really rising as a dream destination. What is it about Japan, particularly for Gen Z, do you think that I mean, it's massive out of the UK too, and has been for 2 or 3 years. Have you got any views on why Japan now?
So Japan, again, I would say it's the culture. It is safety, and I think it's a safe and secure place what travelers are comfortable with. And Gen Z definitely is very much, when you talk about Netflix, when you talk about technology, this is where the Gen Z and in fact millennials are swayed towards. They want to explore. And when you talk about Gen X, they again want to explore, apart from the connect and the bond that they would want to make with the, the culture and the country. But it's again the family holidays we talk about, the proximity we are talking about, and exploring a different region with a different culture, with a different language, exploring the food, the kind of food. And also, I think most importantly, Indians aren't anymore restricted to the kind of, um, you know, to the food, to the kind of food they would want to like, the traditional way of, they are open to exploring different cuisines. They are open to exploring, experimenting with different things. So that's why countries which were not probably in the bucket list or were just more like aspiration, yes, I'll go one day, people are wanting to go there, and they are not only just wanting to go, they're booking tickets and they're going.
And Oliver, obviously from every travel brand destination out there, we want the dreamers and we want the realistic travelers too, don't we? Tell us a little bit more about what the report told us about those realistic destinations like UAE, Singapore, I think Maldives was actually in that respect, versus the ones that are the more dream, Australia, America, and Japan, along with Switzerland as one that came out really highly too, didn't it?
Yes, did. Yeah, Switzerland as a dream destination, absolutely. If we get up there with the cows in the mountains, be fantastic. But yes, in terms of slightly more realistic, yeah, it's as you rightly say, Debbie, it's UAE, it's Singapore, Maldives as well. There are some interesting generational differences in there, though. Again, pulling that out for Gen Z, those first two, UAE and Singapore, there's much lower intention to visit than amongst the other two, amongst millennials and Gen X. And I think that again is coming down to some of those issues around that sort of safety point, saying, and actually, is it as exciting as somewhere I really want to go, somewhere else I might want to go? But saying that, Maldives still holds up very well amongst Gen Z. And actually, just outside the top three, or fourth place is Thailand, which is obviously doing fantastically well with Indian travelers at the moment. Visa-free Thailand is where a lot of people want to go, and all generations want to go. So that's doing very well with Gen Z as well as the other generations. Yeah, so in contrast, UAE, Singapore really over-indexing with millennials and Gen X. So there's certainly strong destinations. I'm not saying that they're going to suffer just because Gen Z aren't putting them as high. I think it's something you probably come round to as you get a little bit older. What they're offering is it's that safety, luxury. They're easy to reach. There's lots to do there, and lots to do for everybody as well. So it's easy to plan and to create that full itinerary that the Gen Xers want. The food is easy. Everything's easy. There's something there for everyone. I think you start to get then a little bit different as we go through the realistic destinations, which pretty much all under index for Gen Z because they're more interested in going to a dream destination. There are some which do slightly better than you might have thought, which as we go further down the list. But they tend to be very close to India. So Nepal and Sri Lanka doing reasonably well. Philippines doing well with Gen Z and Iran as well. We're down to relatively small numbers in the survey, so these aren't statistically hugely robust, but I think they're worth a call out just to give you a flavour for some of the other sorts of destinations which Gen Z are interested in and looking at, even if it's at a relatively lower level.
Well, I think that's the whole idea. It's depictive of the bigger nation, and it's been some really interesting. So I think now it'd be really good to maybe go on and talk about content in a bit more detail to finish up. So particularly Oliver, this is one for you to kick off with. Jen said very much into YouTube and Instagram in terms of their source for inspiration. How do you think travel brands can help influence them with more authentic content, whether that's for a dream destination or from a luxury perspective in terms of their travel choices?
Yeah, and I think to try and answer that, we probably need to go back to this desired post-trip feeling around being relaxed and rebalanced for Gen Z, but trying to align that with fun, excitement, and a little bit of adventure as well. And to me, that suggests authentic content needs to be about variety and showing a little bit of having a good time. But that's not just sort of testimonials from real travelers. It's video content, and it's showing, we'd say this in the reports, showing how it really is, input from influencers as well around that. And obviously YouTube and Instagram work very well for doing that, and to sort of help demystify some of these slightly more exotic locations as part of the process, but with people involved who are seen as peers rather than more educators, shall we say. So I think even for Gen Z, informative content with detailed information on activities and amenities, it can still be part of this. They still do want to know what they're going to get. You don't want to get it's not about getting lost in content that is ethereal dreamscapes and stylized parties. They still want to know what they're going to receive, what it's going to be like when they go there and have a proper understanding of the destination. They just don't want the day-to-day detailed itinerary of it. It needs to be a little bit more inside. So, and again, I think we say in the report, sort of day in the life videos, behind the scenes adventures, those sorts of things will work very well. Gen X, yeah, the detailed itineraries. They're using travel websites and blogs to find their way through this. A bit more word of mouth for Gen X as well.
And why do you think YouTube came out so highly as the choice for inspiration for content compared to any other channel?
I just think its ability to really show what's going on in a true and honest way. The fact that you can pick your way through high profile or very low profile individuals who may have posted content and find it easily. That's really at the core of it. I mean, I'm not a social media expert, the ins and outs of one over the other, but it's just YouTube is so universally used. I think that's really what's driving a lot of this. And so if you are going to look for something new, going to where most of the content will be is probably the easiest way to do it. I would say that the challenge to that is, and we haven't spoken about it at all, we've got all the way through almost, and we haven't spoken about AI once, and I will just mention it, which is that AI is not a source of inspiration for travel, but it is a source of planning. What might change is if AI starts to use imagery and content as part of its answering and delivery, then we will see a change there. And I think AI could start to encroach on some of these, some of the dare I say, traditional social media.
I know that's funny that we're talking in that language, but we absolutely are. Shivani, with the rise of user-generated content, how are brands adapting, or how should they be adapting to create this more authentic, emotionally resonated content that will appeal to the Indian traveller?
So I think adding to what Oliver said, YouTube definitely provides a lot of depth and relatability. And so again, like I mentioned earlier, it's the multiple touch points when we are talking about one. Of course, I would say that Instagram sparks desire. YouTube definitely builds trust and relatability. And like our report mentions, I think Vlog definitely seals the deal. So when you see there are multiple touch points, and for multiple touch points, we need to have a very different connection, with the emotion, with the audience, Indian traveler. And when we have different set of generations to deal with as our target audience, and we have different content, the kind of content, different platforms we are talking about. We are talking about the kind of content with each emotional driver that we are trying to relate to. So there is a need for a very agile, a very strategic thinking to target each and every generation, because we are not reaching out to any age groups per se. We are not reaching out to demographics now. It's, the emotion is the new currency when we talk about. So it's no longer one type of content or one type of platform. And now with AI coming up, like Oliver mentioned, things have to evolve and are evolving, and we cannot as a tourism as a destination, we cannot stick to one kind of content. So it's important to understand how we can personalize it. It is important to understand the kind of platform we are using. It is important to understand what kind of influencers. It's not just about influencers, how authentic the content can be, and what real stories people can relate to. So it's not about seeing, it's more about feeling. So it's no longer how I see a place or a destination or an image, and I'll just book my tickets. It's not going to work like that. What is going to work is, how do I feel when I see that kind of content? Do
And
I
I
see myself at that place? Do I see myself, I imagine, and what triggers in my mind that I need to immediately go online and book my tickets, or figure out, read the reviews and see who are the my friends and peers talking about it, and maybe look at, the influencers whom I trust, the voices, I would say. I won't even say influencers, I would say the voices that I trust, which is who are talking about the real experiences, the journey. It's so connecting with them. So I think it's again a very important strategic thinking for all of this. It's no longer one straight line.
No, and in a way, I think we're heading towards the top of the hour. Before we wrap up, I do want to let you all know in the audience that if you do have any questions, then please let us know, and we'll answer them. So do let us know. I'll keep an eye on the Q&A, just to see if we have any here. But in the meantime, I think this report, for me, who obviously doesn't live in India, but as a comm specialist, I can see how anybody reading the report, whatever spectrum of the travel industry they're in, would be able to see much deeper how the different groups have changed and what does connect them emotionally. And I do think, because the influencer market, even if is big in India, isn't it? But maybe a lot of people don't know that. And it's thinking about, as an example, how do you, when you've got those three different audiences and the way they might be spontaneous versus planning, how do you, for instance, turn an Instagram post that you see that someone might have saved, into an actual booking that will turn into something that's planned for those that do want an element of planning or lots of planning. It's kind of being able to dig that deep, isn't it? So I don't know whether either of you have a view on that sort of process from the marketing perspective.
So
because Indians are changing how they're booking, aren't they? They are, so the older generations are, still needing an OTA, which they're big in, and the travel consultants are important in India, compared to the younger generations who are quite happy to just click and book.
absolutely. So I think what is important is either ways, Debbie, that there has to be seamless way to kind of, without friction. I would say the frictionless experience that we need to provide to whoever is there, whether definitely Gen Z is more tech savvy, and Gen X would still want to go through their like OTAs or the travel agents, either ways. So it is important to build in the flexibility. It is important to give them the options of even last minute bookings. So the seamless booking time, the seamless experience of getting through this is important.
Any views on that, Oliver?
I was just going to add that I think that we do see it in the survey as well to an extent that the travel agent, and not necessarily the online travel agent, but the travel agent, full stop, that there's still very much a role, but it tends to be amongst the older generations where perhaps there's more to book. It's a more complex purchase, and again, thinking about Shivani's comment about on the wedding side, if you've got a very large wedding to arrange, and now it's got to be overseas, then that's going to be an even more complicated piece of work than it was previously. So very much a role for travel agents still to be involved to pull together a trip which is going to tick all of these boxes we've been talking about. It's not easy to do on your own all the time. And so I still think there is always going to be that role for a curator to get involved and to really help. And I'm sure we'll see that particularly through the higher income respondents in the survey. It does come through, particularly for Gen X.
And I think, with all the stats about where, how much the market is going to be worth over the next few years, just getting a few of these things right and personalizing communications is going to be the key to winning more of that business, no matter where you are in the ecosystem of travel. And then we don't have any questions, so to wrap up, I'd like to ask both of you two things. If you either had to sum up in one word, how the Indian traveller of 2025, or I'd let you have three words if you want, but what would you say? And is there anything else that we haven't talked about today that really struck you from the report that you'd like our audience to take away with them and remember?
Indian audience today, I think, Debbie, I would say is empowered, because it's a lot to do with how we are exposed to the social media, exposed to different kind of content, exposed to the traveling since many years now. And I think post-pandemic, things have really moved faster than, which was expected. People have the experiences, the pre-COVID experiences were very different from post-COVID experiences. Now people really would want to understand, want to have those experiences, want to feel empowered, want to feel, I would say, precious, want to feel that premium, that luxury, that because they have access to, and they are definitely, unapologetically, they would seek for what matters to them.
Great, thank you. Oliver, last word?
Yeah, I would something very similar. I'd say they're ready. And they're ready to go wherever they can. They're ready to spend. They're ready to travel. You can see it. Just every time we see like a change in visa rules from a particular country, like an Azerbaijan or somewhere, we see an influx of Indian travelers, and this is great. This is definitely an audience that is just waiting to go, that wants to go, that isn't fearful, that wants to try something a little bit different, ready to explore, ready to spend, ready to enjoy themselves. So that for me is and that comes through in the survey, the desire for these dream destinations and the realistic ones as well is very much there, and some of that traditional cautiousness is being swapped for really wanting to get out there and give it a go.
Well, I think if we were to sum up, the IATA AGM was just in Delhi, wasn't it, Shivani? And the growth of the different routes from so many airports from India across the world. I think anybody on this call or who reads our report that wants some of the Indian market should feel very positive. And on that note, I'd like to thank everyone for their attention, and Shivani and Oliver for all their hard work on the report, as well as joining us today. And if anybody at any point has any individual questions for us, feel free to message us. We'd be delighted to answer them, or even have one-on-one chats on Zoom. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Debbie.